Hello and welcome to this episode of Ritter's Rant. Today we're going to be discussing the 51st day. Now, sometimes when you hear calendars expressed in this way, it seems like a biblical reference, and God said it will rain on the 51st day, or God will smite you on the 51st day. But it's not God speaking. No, it's Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator from the state of South Carolina, sometimes behaves as if he were God, as if his words matter, as if what he thought, said, and did had any real relevance in this world. And of course, it does. He is a senior senator. He sits on some very influential committees. And he's somebody who's been in politics long enough to have assembled what passes for political power, whether that's, just simply having been around so long that he's the only one who knows anything. Maybe he knows things about other people that he holds over them. Who knows what it is that makes Lindsey Graham what he is? But he's not God. And therefore, we need to be careful when too much credence is given to words coming out of Lindsey Graham's mouth. President Trump has recently announced that he is given Russia 50 days to get its act together. He's tired of speaking on the phone with Russian President Vladimir Putin and having nice conversations, only to find out that after they hang up, Putin went out and bombed Ukraine again. I mean, it's so bad. Trump apparently turns to his wife, Melania, and says, I had a nice conversation with old Vladimir Putin. And Melania says, he bombed Kiev tonight. That apparently changed everything. It's curious that Melania didn't say he bombed Kiev tonight because the Ukrainians launched a drone attack against Russian strategic nuclear forces, or that Ukraine launches hundreds of drone attacks against Russian civilian targets ranging throughout the depth of Russia. No, nobody talks about the Ukrainian actions. They simply discuss the Russian reactions. And somehow people are surprised that the Russian reactions would be decisive, that the Russian reactions would be designed to create a condition that would compel the Ukrainians to stop launching drone attacks against Russia, as opposed to continue them. And then people are surprised when the Russians further rev up the pressure being put on Ukraine by additional drone attacks. I read somewhere that the Russians are about to surpass the 1,000 geranium drone a day production mark. That means that for every day they're producing 1,000 of these. And that means at some point in time, they perhaps plan on launching up to 1,000 drones a day, backed up by Caliber missiles, Iskander missiles, and other missiles. This is unmatched firepower that Ukraine will never be able to meet, regardless of the amount of assistance they're provided by the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Americans, the Dutch, the collective West. No, 50 days isn't going to do a damn thing on the battlefield, except make the Russians even more angry than they are. The Russian general staff isn't, I believe, knocking on Vladimir Putin's door saying, boss, we got to stop the war in 50 days. Lindsey Graham is promising something awful on the 51st day. What is Lindsey Graham suggesting on the 51st day? Well, he said, ask the Ayatollah. Now, I'm assuming he means Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and he's making a reference to the 12-day conflict and what happened during that conflict, that the Iranian capital of Tehran was attacked by the Israelis, that the United States dropped bombs on 3 empty sites inside Iran. Is this what he's doing? Is Lindsey Graham threatening Russia and the president of Russia with an American military response? Well, the good news is Lindsey Graham's in no position to make his words reality. He's not in the chain of command. He has no command authority over the American armed forces, and he doesn't get to make that decision. But the bad news is Lindsey Graham is a voice that the president listens to and the media listens to, and people pick up on it. I can't think of something more insulting to the Russian leadership than an American senator suggesting that Russia somehow bow its head, come to its knees before the United States because Lindsey Graham suggests Russia might come under an American attack. I would remind Lindsey Graham that Russia has promulgated a nuclear doctrine, and that nuclear doctrine makes it quite clear that if a nuclear armed power carries out a conventional strike against Russia in a manner that threatens the existential survival of Russia, then Russia will respond with the full weight of its nuclear arsenal. The 51st day could have biblical consequences because it conjures up the imagery of Armageddon. No, Lindsey Graham, your 51st day doesn't scare anybody. Fact is, I don't think we'll get to the 51st day because I don't think Donald Trump will allow this thing to go to 50 days. Why 50? 50 is a very arbitrary time. I mean, does he have a plan? No, the reality is Donald Trump doesn't have a plan. That's why he picked 50 days. This isn't about putting pressure on Russia to change its attitude regarding Ukraine. This is to buy time for the United States to come up with a plan, something that could work. Now, Donald Trump knows that he can't allow a plan to be formulated in a vacuum. So he has to create the impression that he's putting pressure on Russia. And he does that with 50 days. 50 days to what? Not to bombing. Donald Trump hasn't threatened this time around to bomb Iran or to Russia. We know in 2024, Donald Trump spoke to his imaginary friend, Vladimir Putin, and said that if you invade Kiev, I will bomb the shit out of Moscow. We know that that resides somewhere in Donald Trump's brain, but it's not a real statement. It didn't happen. And he's not about to make a real threat against the Russian president who is, at the command of the world's most advanced strategic nuclear forces. So it wasn't a military threat. What Donald Trump did do is threaten secondary sanctions. Now, secondary sanctions are important because the concept of threatening Russia with sanctions is almost laughable. It's become a political meme because apparently the more we sanction Russia, the stronger the Russian economy gets. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything in Russia is roses and sunshine and unicorns and happy puppy dogs. I'm sure Russia has as many problems facing them as Americans do. Life isn't perfect. Life is always a struggle wherever you're at. But the idea that the Russian economy is collapsing, that Russian society is deteriorating is laughable. The Russians, like the Americans, like everybody else in the world, get up in the morning and go to work. And they work to earn money, and they use that money to pay bills and then to live their lives. And the lives that the Russian people are living aren't bad lives. In fact, one could make the case that their lives have improved since 2022 and the new economic reality brought on by Russia's response to the sanctions of the West against the Russian economy. Maybe many Russians would thank the United States to put even more sanctions on Russia because apparently the more Russia gets sanctioned, the better the Russian economy performs. But this isn't about sanctioning Russia. This is about sanctioning those nations who have enabled the Russian economy to perform as well as it does. Nations like China, Brazil, India. You see, the president has said that if after 50 days, Russia hasn't changed its response to Ukraine and to American demands, that we're going to slap, I think it's 100% sanctions on or tariffs on trade with these three nations. Now, how has that gone over? Well, the Chinese have said that they're going to ignore that. And everybody expects that if these sanctions are ever imposed on China, China will respond with similar or even harsher sanctions against the United States. President Lula of Brazil has said that if the United States doesn't want to trade with Brazil, then Brazil won't trade with the United States. So there goes any concept of, pressure put on Brazil. India is on the fence, as they have been for some time now. But at some point in time, the Indians have to wake up to the reality that, to continue to yield to the United States is to continue to allow their sovereignty to be called into question. And I think this time around, India is starting to see the light and recognize that, no, they're not going to kneel to the United States. They have the ability to interact in a responsible manner with the rest of the world through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, through BRICS, through the G20. And they're not going to throw it away by yielding to Donald Trump's, childish rant. So I think the reality is that as we get closer to 50 days, you're not going to be seeing a change in the policies of either Russia, India, China, or Brazil. You're going to see the Trump administration come up with a new approach in which they will re-engage with Russia, because ultimately the best thing that can happen to the United States right now is normal relations with Russia. Normal relations with Russia that bring an end to this horrific conflict in Ukraine, but on terms that will be acceptable to Russia. So that's where we're headed, the 51st day. Now, what will happen to Lindsey Graham on the 51st day? I mean, he has promised fire and brimstone, the skies to open up, ask the Ayatollah. Lindsey Graham will continue to be the perfume princess that he is, this elderly, effeminate, fat nobody who words have no meaning whatsoever. I mean, literally, the world is not quaking in fear because of what Lindsey Graham says. And on the 51st day, the world will realize that Lindsey Graham is as relevant to international peace and security and geopolitical reality as my little pinky. That's my rant. 51 days. Thanks for tuning in. And next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know about it.